Oh, Earth citizens, celebrate Earth citizens. Sing it with a joyful and an open heart. Oh, Earth citizens, celebrate Earth citizens. Sing it with an open heart. Oh, Bear Heart, celebrate Bear Heart. Sing it with a joyous and an open heart. Oh, Bear Heart, celebrate Bear Heart. Sing it with an open heart. Oh. Welcome all you Earth citizens. Hope you can see me there. But I just want to say that I'm just really happy that we can all be together at this time. Originally, when I started thinking about having a smaller Zoom session with a few people, and then it kind of blossomed out. I guess we planted it in good soil. Originally, I wanted to talk about a workshop that Bearheart used to do called Whose Shoulders Have You Stood On to Make You the Person That You Are Today? Well, it was a very positive time. People would come up and stand next to Bearheart if he had a microphone or if it was outdoors, and they would share about their grandfather or someone that they admired and that they wanted to emulate in life. And it was all very, very beautiful. And Bearheart liked that workshop because he didn't have to work so hard. He could sit and listen a little bit, which was nice. And then I tried to recreate that workshop up at Cloudcroft with a gathering of circles. And I had a big dream catcher with strings tied onto it. And the idea was for people to make a prayer tie and to attach it to a string and to walk their prayer up to the dream catcher and put it on there and say who it was that whose shoulders they stood on. The story, of course, many of you might have been to that workshop and know, but I guess I should say something about what that story was. It was a little boy at a parade sitting on his father's shoulders, and he kept saying, "Daddy, Daddy, I wish you could see this parade. It's so beautiful." But he didn't know that his daddy had sat on his daddy's shoulders. So that's why Bearheart called it that. So up in Cloudcroft on top of the mountain that's in the Sacramento Mountains in southern New Mexico, a woman, Sarah Hummingbird, made her prayer tie, and she got up and she was about ready to walk her prayer towards the dream catcher. And I knew that her mom had just passed away. Her little 4-year-old, Emma, when she saw her mother get up, she screamed out, "Tell them my grandma just died." And I have to tell you, my heart kind of stopped because Bearheart's workshop had always been so positive, and this little 4-year-old was there telling the truth about her heart. So she's 10 now, and she, by the way, she had stopped talking when her grandma died, and her mother said those were the first words that she spoke after that. And she's still a very quiet child, but doing very well in school. So here you are. You're in the big tent on top of the mountain in Cloudcroft. It's GOC time, early in August. Bearheart is there. He just told you the story of the little boy on his dad's shoulders. That little boy saying, "Wish you could see the parade, Dad." Now Bearheart is calling you to the center of the tent. What story will you tell of who helped you in your life? Did you want to be like a hero? Did you not want to be like an abusive relative or someone else that had qualities that you did not admire? Do you want the people to know of your pain? Do you want to really connect and have the kind of intimacy that we've been learning how to walk that path of communing with nature and experiencing that intimacy? This morning I saw it's an East Indian goddess in a puddle because we're having snow here, new tracks in New Mexico. And there was water in the street, a big image of Durga, the goddess. So it made me so happy. Do we want that kind of intimacy in our lives? So I'm asking you, if you want to put something in the chat, finish this sentence. Tell them that, you can say, tell them that I am, tell them that I am happy to be here, but very, very sad. I've lost someone close to me, or a friend has lost someone close to me. It's a new feeling. This whole situation is a new feeling. So the sentence is, tell them that, just like little Emma said, tell them my grandma died. She and a child shall lead them. She knew intuitively, just for herself. She didn't have to think about it. She wanted to be connected to everybody in that tent. And boy, did she get connected. You're going to hear from some really good speakers today. And at this time, I'd like to ask Carol Flake Chapman to give us a poem. She's our official poet laureate of the Earth Tribe. I call her that. If you want to call her that, it's okay with me. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you so much for asking me to be part of this. When you told me about the event, I did not get to meet Bearheart in person, but I felt inspired by him to write this poem that is, in a way, it does reflect what we're all going through with the virus, but something even deeper than that. And I think we're all learning new sacraments to replace the old ones that didn't work anymore. So this poem is called Sequestered Sunday. Let's imagine we are on a vigil, or even better, a vision quest, away from the usual comforts that satisfy our many appetites. Let's allow ourselves to be hungry for once and not sate ourselves. And let's see what we hunger for. Let's see what our souls are craving, what they've been starving for. Could it be this quiet solitude? So quiet here, I can hear the trees thinking out loud through their roots. So quiet, I think I can hear wolves somewhere in the distance howling at the moon we can finally see, waxing and waning in clear night skies, with no business as usual to interrupt this new sacred communion. We may drink a heady new wine and break open the loaves that miraculously multiply to fill us all. I watch the monarchs flutter down like tongues of flame of the Pentecost, teaching us all the languages we need to talk to the earth and to hear each other.
So beautiful, Carol. Thank you so much for doing that for us. That really sets the tone of this program here. Well, as our resident chief, Dr. Will Tagle, says, let's go, go, go into the aware go, into the blue yonder. I'm going to say a couple of things about Will Tagle. I call him Bearheart's soul buddy. I don't know if he knows that I call him that, but because of the way Bearheart spoke about him at every single gathering, rarely did he not mention his name, even when the two of them had split over some stuff. And but he thought of him that way. And there, in the early days, he had taken him under his wing. I was actually at one of the first vision quests where Will was sending people out on the hill, and Bearheart was there to guide in those early days. But then they got closer and closer. And I feel personally a beneficiary of the Earth Tribe, which started with a spark from Bearheart and some other elders while Will was being exposed to those deep wisdoms. So I have a lot more to say about him, probably not criticizing him at all. But given the program, I want to say that we're all growing. He's helped me to grow, to find a voice. He said a prayer one time for me to find my own voice. And I don't know if I have the whole voice yet, but I'm working on it. And so I'd like to share with you now Will Tagle, Winged Medicine, Starheart.
Good afternoon. I'm Will Starheart Tagle, and I'm here with you to honor our ancestor, Bearheart Williams. What a privilege it is for us to be together in this way in the midst of a major rebalancing within Mother Earth's being. It's quite challenging and yet full of possibility and promise. Some of you have read in my book when I first met Bearheart. We were a part of a national conference of psychologists and psychiatrists, mental health workers in New Mexico. We were under a large and auspicious cottonwood tree. It was my first contact with Bearheart. And he spread out before him something of what you see right here. An array of feathers. And that day, from early in the morning until sundown, the two of us, conducted a feather healing ceremony for these psychologists, psychiatrists, and psychotherapists. And so today, I want to invite you into a 4 feathers healing ceremony in honor of Ancestor Bearheart. Later, in a second vision quest, Bearheart gave me a nature name, a tribal name of Fuswa in Heleswa. It means winged or bird medicine. And so in the spirit of his gift to me and to the earth at large, I embark on this 4 feathers healing ceremony. You might say, wherever you are, if you're on mute, if you're on mute, you might say out loud the words, Fuswa in Heleswa. That's Muskogee Creek for winged or bird medicine. And the bird medicine I want to start with today, on your behalf and on behalf of all the people around the belly of Mother Earth, as we go through this viral wave, is a feather called peace eagle, shashuga. And this is the medicine to help us today in purifying ourselves. The work of this feather is to clean up what needs to be cleaned up in order for us to move through this crisis within Earth. So I want to invite you at this moment to locate in yourself, in your life, in your emotions, and in your spirit, in your body, what needs to be purified, what needs to be washed clean, picked clean. And I'm going to wave this feather over myself, and then I'm going to wave it over you so that you can have the benefit this day in honoring the process of healing given by Bearheart, and that is purification. So first I'm going to wave it over myself. And I send this good purification right now to my daughter Holly and my granddaughter Katie, both of whom are struggling with the virus. And I send this good energy to them and all the people around the planet who suffer as a result of this journey, cleaning up what needs to be cleaned up to make room for greater healing, to let the sound of the birds come through as they honor this healing. Taking a deep breath. Aho. Now we move to the second feather in this healing ceremony. This is the feather of the flying buffalo, that is the turkey. Very often, as I sit here in this particular web of ecofields, the wild turkeys come to grace us when we sweat. They nourish us. This once we begin to be purified with the peace eagle, then the flying buffalo comes to us to open us up to what? Nourishment. The deep energetic nourishment that we need for our healing. The spiritual and physical protein we need to rebuild our DNA. The viral wave has communicated with me and said, I come to disrupt your genetic code in order for you to be a new person, the human species to move across the bridge to Earth's new identity, new era. And so as I wave this turkey feather, you feel the nourishment entering your body, mind, spirit. The flying buffalo, Fuswa in Heliswa, coming into your body, mind, spirit. The third feather that I bring for our healing today is the owl feather. This is the feather that we need right now because it's the energy of medicine that takes us through the darkness, through the shadows. This is the feather that brings out that part of our inner council that we don't want to see. that part that we like to push off on political figures. That part of us we like to push off on people we love even. This is something that Bearheart and I spent quite a bit of time doing, that is, trying to own the shadow that we were projecting on each other. And so this feather helps us with that. And I'm going to wave it towards you, wave it toward me, sending good energy to my daughter and granddaughter, to all the people that suffer in this viral wave, whether supporting or actually having the virus. I send it to you. I send it to all of the people who are losing loved ones, all of the people in grief, all the people who have shadows of suffering coming through this feather, coming through this feather to you, taking a deep, deep breath. The fourth feather of our four feather healing, our Fuswa in Heliswa, is the eagle feather. The eagle feather. This is the feather that as we begin to be purified with the peace eagle and nourished with the flying buffalo and flying on the back of the owl. Once we begin to do that, the owl is the night eagle. The golden eagle and the bald eagle are the day eagles. And they take us to a larger perspective. And what is that larger perspective of healing? That is the intimate connection that we have with each other. The intimate connection we have with the trees and with the birds and with all living creatures. The intimacy of that connection is restored And through that intimacy, we draw on healing. We draw on healing. And I'm going to wave this eagle feather in your direction, that you can use this energy to get bigger and bigger perspective to the larger healing that is taking place, the larger sense of connection with all beings. So I want to bring a close to this healing circle, so there's plenty of time for other people today in honoring Bearheart, by mentioning, going a little deeper into a story in my book, Walking with Bears. As some of you know, Bearheart and I were involved with each other over about a 30-year period. And in that time, he spent quite a bit of time in our house living with us. And as would be the case over a long period of time, we developed some tensions every once in a while. So we were two pretty big energies butting heads every once in a while. And for a long time, or for an extended period of time, we took a vacation from each other. And one day I got a phone call from Regina, Water Spirit, telling me that Bearheart would like to visit with me. So Judith and I drove out to the Albuquerque area. And we were going out to eat that night. And Regina and Judith were in another car, so Bearheart and I were together for a period of time, and they were already up at the restaurant, so we had quite a walk. And as we got out of the car, Bearheart took my hand, my arm, to lean on me. And as we walked the path, I was aware that he had to stop and breathe every once in a while and use my younger body as his body. And then when we got into the restaurant, he was leaning against a table, and the table gave way and he was falling, and I grabbed him and brought him up, and suddenly we were hugging each other. We looked deeply into each other's eyes. And in that very intimate moment, we plunged deep into the space-time continuum of eternity. And we experienced the healing of eagle intimacy, looking beyond our tensions, looking beyond our cultures, looking beyond our time, our ages, deeply into each other's eyes. And we felt that healing. And so today, with the Fuswa and Heliswa, the four-feather healing, I invite you to wait upon the sacred mystery, the Allah, and to renew your strength, and to mount up with wings as eagles, and to run and not be weary, to walk and not faint, as together, through healing, we begin to move across the bridge to Earth's new era. Aho Matakiwasan Inake, cherished relatives.
Aho, Inaki. Gosh, Will, thank you so very much. I would like to ask you, Will, if you would, um, if you'd like to say a little word or two. I was reading the chat a little bit, and Berhard has a friend in upstate New York who's very connected with these ways, and he wanted to know if what Berhard might say about what's happening today in our world with the pandemic. And I didn't want to harp too much on the pandemic today. I knew that it would definitely be here and come up and be on all of our hearts. And when I read that, I felt Berhard reminding me of that his only fear when he was leaving was that people would forget about the power of prayer. And I was wondering if you had something to say about that or anything at all regarding what you've just spoken about.
I'm just happy to be here with all of you as we join hands with our dear, dear ancestor. And I don't think that I would venture into saying what Bearheart might say.
Really? How come? I'm always
But I would
doing it.
say, but what I would say, Regina, is that laughter is prayer. And this wonderful circle today is one of the doorways opening that what we're going through right now is a major opening into possibility that the sacred mystery, the beloved creator can lead us, and that imperfect as we are, the circle will be unbroken by and by.
Thank you so much, Will. I really appreciate those words, especially about laughter being prayer. It brings me to another story, which I'm not going to tell right now. Our next speaker is my friend and brother, Glenn Perry. And Glenn is a major personality in our community here. He's the founder of Seed University, and he's created a circle around him of some of the finest people I've met in my 78 years. And I welcome him with an open heart. I care about him and love him like so many people in our community does. And he's an author. He wrote Original Thinking, and now he's writing a new book, which I hope he will put up on the chat so we can order it when it comes out. So without further introduction, here is Glenn Perry.
Thank you, Regina. What a great blessing it is to be here. What a great blessing it is to know you, Regina. What a great blessing it has been to know Mike Two Bears, who was another person who was close to Bearheart. What a great blessing to know Will a little bit. Will Tagle, thank you for appreciating the book I wrote, Original Thinking. Thank you for all the work that you've done with Bearheart for those so many years, and thank you for your presence today and in bringing us into awareness of this important moment in time that we are entering, that we are in. And I just think, beloved Creator, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to be together. Thank you for this opportunity to breathe together. Thank you for this opportunity to know that the breath that we take in is the breath of our ancestors. Thank you for the light of consciousness that penetrates all things. Thank you for the starlight, the light in our solar plexus. Thank you for the breathing aware air, the prana, the pneuma, the ruach that connects us all. And thank you, Pachamama, Mother Earth, that we're born from and that we return to. Thank you for that interconnection. Thank you for this time of learning. Thank you for the awakening. What Will was talking about, a viral wave. Thank you for that. Mother Earth bringing that major rebalancing. I just have completed writing a book called Original Politics. And in that book, I already look at our current president as a change agent. I also see him as a trickster figure. Now, not a conscious trickster figure like a Lakota Heyoka that is consciously trying to snap people out of their stuck ways of being to bring them into a fuller, greater consciousness. But nonetheless, he's an unwitting trickster figure. And he's a little bit like Pan, the Greek god, who has the upper torso of a man, but the legs, hindquarters, and horns of a goat. Pan was the licentious god of sexual dalliances. Of course, Pan was also a nature god, and maybe that doesn't fit Donald Trump so well because for him, nature is a golf course. But still, Pan is the mischievous. He's a mischievous fellow, and he throws people off balance. That's something that Donald Trump has done. Donald Trump's a little bit like Loki, also, the Norse god, who brings the world to the brink of destruction, but then pulls back at the last moment. And Trump is, he's governed in a way that he's not the first one. I mean, the divide and conquer is a very old idea. So he's divided the nation into certain groups for his purposes, and sometimes he's wielded fear to achieve his own ends. But now he's being upended by something more fearsome than him, a tiny virus. So, and it may not be a coincidence that the Greek god Pan I mentioned is also the root of panic and pandemic, not to mention pandemonium. So we have entered a time where we have to come face to face with our own fears. I think all of us have had to face our own fears. Some people have allergies this time of year, and this year they're a little more nervous about those allergies or something. But we've come face to face with our own fears, but like Will was alluding to, and other speakers have addressed, like Irvin Laszlo, we're now at a bifurcation point. We have a choice. We have a choice. We've seen what happens now when human beings cease their incessant economic activities. We've seen Mother Earth have a breath. Now, some of the stuff that's on the internet about this is a little bit overstated. I wouldn't be drinking from the Ganges River right now if I were you, but it is clearing up some. It is clearing up some. And this is an opportunity to pause and rethink at a deeper level about what human beings have been doing. I mean, I was in conversation with Oren Lyons recently, and Oren Lyons told me a story about when he was in Davos, Switzerland, and he was amongst all those economic bigwigs. And he told them that what they were doing was like they were jockeys on a horse in a horse race. And they were whipping their horse as fast as they could go to get to the finish line. But what they didn't realize is that the finish line was a brick wall. And that's kind of the way human beings were acting until perhaps now we have an opportunity to see what happened when we pause. So I would propose a very simple thing, perhaps all the major nations of the world. I think there were 192 nations that signed the Paris Accords. Maybe if 80 odd nations took a 2-week vacation from economic activity from now forward in a rolling moratorium, maybe we might be able to give Mother Earth that breath each place along the way, because we've seen that that's accomplished more in the month that we've shut things down than anything that was done in the Paris Accords. But we're here to talk about Bearheart, and I haven't met Bearheart in a way. In another way, I feel I have, through Regina, through my two bears, through Will, through through Mukit, through other people. So I feel very grateful. And I will tell this story, when my, I was invited by Grandma Flor de Mayo once to, in the autumn of 2012, to do a ceremony that was put together, and Flor de Mayo works really from spirit, so she didn't know exactly what was going to happen even, but she said she was inviting men to the ceremony. It turned out there were equal numbers of men and women. And what unfolded was that this was the time for the men to hand the talking staff to the women. That's what unfolded in spirit. And I happened to have a talking staff because the organization Regina referred to, Seed, had done a talking stick film festival in 2012. So I gave Grandma Flor de Mayo the staff that has then been decorated and adorned. But it was also funny at that meeting because the men kept talking about how they were going to hand the staff to the women. I said, well, do it already. Okay, that was my thought. Okay, so so then I didn't have a staff, and my book came out, and I wanted to facilitate a dialogue circle. So I think that somehow at that moment, Regina decided that she would allow me to caretake Bearheart's staff, which is an incredibly impressive staff, with power just emanating from it. And so I was very grateful and surprised that she asked me that. And I took the staff home and I placed it by my bedside. And I went to sleep. And then I had a dream. I had a dream that the staff with the head of an eagle was flying. And so I awoke from the dream, and the staff fell to the floor. Because it was flying. It was off the floor. And that was one of the more powerful things that ever happened to me. So it was that staff that I took to the opening ceremony talk for my book tour that year, May 1st, 2015. And after the beautiful ceremony, Regina announced to me that, okay, thank you for caretaking the staff. It's time to take it back now. I was going to leave in a few days for Colorado to do a book tour. So I called my friend Mike Two Bears, and I said, do you think that Ruben Medina, who's a wonderful wood carver, do you think that he's ever carved talking staffs? And Mike said, well, I don't know, but he's coming to Albuquerque tomorrow for a medical appointment. You might want to call him and arrange to meet him. And so I called Ruben and I said, have you ever carved talking staffs? And Ruben said, well, I never had until 2 weeks ago. I was given direction from Spirit to start carving a talking staff. It's almost completed. And I said, well, great. I'll meet you in Albuquerque tomorrow. And I saw it, and it was all but completed. But since I was going, I said, when will it be completed? He said, in a couple of days. I said, perfect. I'll come to Taos. And I did. I could go on and on with this, actually, because there's something about the staff and letting go that sometimes brings us what needs to appear. And we are, it seems to me, coming into a similar time now, you know, a time when we need to let go of so many things that we were accustomed to having as normal. And we're exploring new interfaces. Things like these Zoom meetings are becoming de rigueur. Everybody's doing it. And with good reason, because this is our new forming of community. And what a blessing that is. Thank you so much for all the people here, all the people that have known and loved Bearheart. And I just want to say one more tiny thing. My animals are wanting to join too, so Cappuccino and Sunrise. And at the end of the book, I wrote Original Politics. I ended that book with love. And I did that partly because 5 years ago, my wife told me that I was going to write a book called Original Love. Now, this is not something Tomoko ever says. She doesn't make predictions about what I'm going to do. But she said this 5 years ago. And I said, okay, sweetheart, that sounds rather daunting, but I opened up the folder. I started a folder called Original Love. Then a year later, I'm in Taos, and Mike Two Bears has introduced me to somebody named Jean Ellis Sankari, and she is teaching at UNM Taos, and she's talking about me teaching at UNM Taos. So she said, she's talking to me, she interrupts herself in the middle of a sentence, and she says, I just got a download. You're going to write a book called Original Love, and it's going to be the third in a 3-part series with the book with original in the title. So I thought that was pretty amazing, and any sensible person then would have absolutely done that. But for some strange reason, for 2 years, I started to think that I was going to write a book called Sacred Politics. And I actually wrote the book proposal called Sacred Politics. And when I would ask people, do you like sacred politics or original politics better, they would always say sacred politics. But I never changed the computer folder, which is funny. The computer folder said original politics. And so then my wife comes to me again about a year and a little bit over a year ago and says, there's an Islamic scholar that's writing a book called Sacred Politics. And being that she's an Islamic scholar, it might be a book on theocracy, the merging of religion and politics, which is done in the Islamic world. And so I said, well, I got to go back to original politics. And that's what I did. And then I realized the subtitle is Original Politics, Making America Sacred Again. And this book needs to end with love, because that's where I'm going to be going with the next book. And the very end of the book, the last paragraph, and it's not something I learned from Bearhart directly, it's something I learned from Mike Two Bears, but something he's told me many times that Bearhart said, which is that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the resolution of conflict with love. And so that's right there in the last paragraph. And it is my prayer that people move forward, understanding that, whether you agree with somebody's political views or not, they're all part of us. Or as Ruben Medina, the staff maker, likes to say often, in Lakesh, I am the other you. And so we are all in this together. Or as Ramana Maharshi said when he was asked, how should we treat others? He replied, there are no others. And that is, in the deepest sense, true. So thank you very much. Many blessings. Love to all.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Glenn. I got to have a program and have you. You say you never met Bearhart. You wish that you had spent more time with him. I wish that I had gone to Seed University and spent more time with you.
You're sweet.
And also, I think that Ruben did work on that staff. I think it was before you had the staff. Ruben fixed the nose of the eagle. Yes. So his energy was already in there. Thank you so much for giving us so much. I want to take just a little second here. On the chat is a lady, Gabrielle Thomas. Now, Bearhart always warned us, don't single people out. It's kind of an indigenous way of value of indigenous people. But I'm going to just step outside that box and single Gabrielle Thomas out. She is working in a New York City hospital. I want her to know I was born in the Bronx, in case she didn't pick that up already. And that we send her much love. And in the words of my brother, Mark Weiler, we really care about you, Gabrielle. We care about you. Thank you so much for going to work every day. Okay. The next speaker is my brother from Los Angeles, Walter Dominguez. I've known Walter, I guess, since the early 80s, however many years that is. I first was introduced to Bearhart by the group that studied with Bearhart in Walter's home in Los Angeles. I could tell you a lot of things about Walter. He's a filmmaker, a documentary maker. But I think for us, Earth citizens, one of the most important things that I know about Walter is he has planted a lot of trees. He's planted a lot of trees all over Los Angeles. He's had groups of people and been part of groups of people who have planted trees. He was doing this way back when. So without further ado, here is my brother, Walter Dominguez.
Thank you, Regina. I want to thank Regina, first of all, for inviting me to participate in this group. It's quite an honor, and what a group of people it is. Regina, you're quite a remarkable woman, and it's okay to receive compliments and praise. Honestly, without your presence, so much that we experienced with Bearhart would not have been possible. Obviously, Bearhart was an extraordinary human being, but it takes an extraordinary human being to live and work with and help and assist an extraordinary human being. Because as we all know, Bearhart could be a handful sometimes. And you stuck with him. You engaged with him and you worked with him, and I think it was an incredible association and partnership the two of you had in love. And I've just recently lost my wife, Shelley. We've been together 46 years. And you and I briefly discussed this morning the difficulty of carrying that grief. And though this is a celebration today of a remarkable man and his legacy, the people around him who are still here and working, it's still painful. And it brings up for me today and the whole weekend thinking about this, and a lot of different feelings, including a lot of joy, a lot of wonderful memories, but also a lot of sadness because we miss our partners, we miss those people that were so tremendous and such a huge presence in our lives. And as you said this morning, we're going to always leave a place for them because we can't do anything else. We have to leave them there. They have to be part of us as we move forward, and they'll always be there. There's just no other way, and they deserve to be there. And so I just wanted to say that, Regina, you're very, very dear in my heart. You hold a special place and always will. And I know Shelley felt the same way. And if she were here with me, she would have something funny to say to make us all laugh, because she was brilliant at that. One of the things she and Bearhart shared, one of their bonds, was the ability to make people laugh. And I still hear Bearhart's laugh. I really miss that laugh. It was hearty. It was wonderful. And so anyway, thank you so much. And I want to thank Carol for that beautiful poem, which helped to put me into a frame of mind and I have my feet are bare so that I could get a little more grounded in your poem, helped to ground me even more, which I really needed because, quite honestly, I'm not an extemporaneous speaker as some of these marvelous teachers like Will is, who can speak so beautifully without notes. I'm basically a writer and a filmmaker, and so I let those things speak for me, and I usually don't speak in public, and certainly not extemporaneously. So I have notes which I will read, and I wish I could be just let it all flow. Will, I was so impressed with that presentation you made. It was quite beautiful, and I can understand what Regina was saying, that in a sense you are a twin of Bearhart, a soul brother. And there was so much about the depth, the pace, and the way you built so beautifully and naturally to a very touching and moving climax to the presentation. And it reminded me so much of Bearhart, and when he could just take an audience with him and take you through all these different places and emotions and feelings. And you're a very lovely man, Will. He always, in all the years, I think I had one opportunity to meet you. I believe you came up to Rancho San Felipe to a Hamblecha vision fast that Bearhart conducted for our community. It was just up in the mountains outside of Anza Borrego, above the desert of California in the mountains, a very beautiful spot with a lot of huge oak trees. And I believe you came to visit, and I had an opportunity to meet you briefly. But Bearhart always said your name with a great, great deal of not just affection, but as if you were truly one of his brothers that he was close to, and a dear, dear friend. And so I'm glad you had that relationship for those many years. And I understand how these things can go. Sometimes you're close and sometimes you have to take a break from each other, but the relationship was there, and it's always been there and always will be. So thank you for that, Will. It was quite, quite beautiful and moving. Glenn, thank you very much for your remarkable way of being able to just free associate and talk about what you're doing and what comes to mind and about these greater matters that are happening to us all right now. Will did that as well, put this whole thing into the context of this worldwide pandemic and how it's profoundly changing us as individuals and how it's profoundly changing the planet and all of us on it. So I'm going to go ahead and begin my presentation, and please excuse the fact that I'm reading, but this is how I work. My name is Walter Dominguez, and I've already thanked Regina, so I'm going to skip on to the next sentence, but I'll just say it again. Thank you. This is an incredible opportunity. And we're talking today about Marcellus Bearhart Williams. And I've had the very good fortune in my life to get to know some truly remarkable men and women, some very famous and some not famous or so famous, but remarkable and very powerful human beings in their own right. And some were within my family of origin. I was blessed to have a grandfather early in life who really put me on a good path looking back, a very spiritual one, a very ethical, and with a lot of love and a lot of affection. And these are people who leave a lasting and important legacy in the hearts and the thoughts and memories of people who they've come into contact with. As Regina said, these are the people upon whose shoulders we get to stand on and see the parade. I almost broke into tears when you said that, Regina, because immediately I had the memory of my father putting me on his shoulders, literally, at a July 5th parade in the little town where I was born and where I spent my first years. And it was one of the first memories I've ever had, and it was quite beautiful. To be on the shoulders of your father is a very powerful thing. And I know for Bearhart, his parents meant so much to him. He loved his mother so much and his father, and when he would talk about them, he would become very emotional. And he had such a deep feeling about things. He, to me, has been a teacher, a mentor, a friend, and above all, a spiritual relative and an adopted father. And he's blessed my life in a multitude of ways as he's left his mark profoundly in the lives of others. It's good to see some of the people he's touched here on the screen, and all the people out there who may have read about him or seen any of his videos or heard him sing. He had a remarkably strong voice. I loved hearing him sing. He was very inspiring that way. And I was always astonished by the level, he was a very intelligent man. His IQ is off the charts, I'm sure. He always surprised me with something new. And he was able to take in knowledge from all kinds of different sources and use this knowledge to help people make better sense of their lives. And so it wasn't just knowledge for knowledge's sake, but it was meaningful. He was the product of a unique and truly extraordinary education within the traditions of his Muskogee Creek culture. Anyone who has an opportunity to learn more about his traditional training, his traditional education, really should take the opportunity to read about it and learn about it, because it's something that is very rare, and probably today is even more rare. But it's a remarkable story. And but then he was also a remarkable student. He was an outstanding athlete in college, in high school and college. He went to Bacone College, and he also was a remarkable scholar. So he had enormous talent And teachers recognized this, and he had a lot of support from people because they recognized his specialness. He eventually became an ordained Baptist minister. And so he was very well schooled in Christian theology and Christian history. And his interest extended beyond Christianity into many different religions. This is what part of what I was saying. He was a remarkable intellect. And he could talk about a lot of the different religions and relate them to his teachings and what he was saying. And so I was always very dazzled by that. But more importantly, I felt his connection was from the heart for me. He changed the course of my life and that of my late wife, Shelley. I met him in 1982 when I heard about a gathering of Native spiritual elders that were going to be held in the mountains of San Diego County. I was in my 30s, and though I had met the love of my life and married her, and I had had the good fortune of having an excellent education and exceptional opportunities to advance a career in filmmaking, I found that I was at a crossroads in my life, and I felt stuck. I felt confused and spiritually empty. And I knew I needed to do something, but I didn't know what. So at that point, I sorely needed the guidance and the inspiration that I soon came to receive from this remarkable man. I was impelled to pack up my camping gear in the car and kiss my wife, Shelley, goodbye and drive up to what was called a medicine wheel gathering, which had been organized by Sun Bear, a native leader, and a collective of seekers called the Bear Tribe. Perhaps some of you were part of that group. I don't know if it's still going, but they organized several of these medicine wheel gatherings that brought elders from various traditions, native traditions, together. And for an entire weekend, I heard a number of traditional native elders speak and lead ceremonies, including sweat lodge ceremonies. I was so moved by the wisdom and kindness of these elders, but when I sat down to listen to Bearheart speak, I was instantly enthralled and taken with both the man and with what he shared. Like all great spiritual teachers, he was a wonderful storyteller, and he could shift your emotions from levity and laughter to suddenly opening your heart and bringing tears to your eyes. But what made him stand above all the others for me was his kindness, his openness and approachability. I felt him to be a very genuine person. And I loved the way that he just greeted people and was just so present. So at this gathering, I also met some young men and women who were likewise pulled to this event and to Bearheart. And these are people like Miguel Rivera and Glenn Schiffman, who were spiritual relatives to me in the following decades and remain so till this day. Bearheart mentored us all for many years. And these people, Miguel and Glenn among them, have eventually become spiritual teachers of their own, very good ones. Upon returning to Los Angeles, there were some disturbing things that happened that made several of my new friends reach out to Bearheart and urgently ask him to come visit us. He heard our plea for help, and he came as soon as possible. He ran a sweat for us, and he used his healing skills to make a special medicine to protect us from this negative energy that was coming at us and doing some harm. And like a father shielding his children, he told us that whatever negativity was being sent our way would have to go through him first. And it was a very, very powerful experience. And the feeling of being taken care of, the feeling of safety, was a remarkable and wonderful thing. And I'll always thank him for that, because he saved a number of us from some potentially catastrophic situations. We were very quickly revolving into a spiritual community. This is out in the Los Angeles area. Many of us live in West Side and up in the San Fernando Valley and places around. And we built sweat lodges, and we invited teachers to come, but especially Bearhart, and put up teepees and sponsored teepee meetings that he ran out in wilderness areas in California, hamblechas out in New Mexico, many, many things. And all of these, each one of these were remarkable, incredible experiences, and each one of them would be worthy of a book. To me, Bearhart was like a brilliant comet that swept into our lives and took us all with him on a whole new trajectory that's been a great and fulfilling adventure. There are just too many teachings and profound experiences with him to tell you about here. But I want to share with you just a few of his teachings that have become foundational to me and helped me move through so many crucial and difficult times in my life. Bearhart always said that the fundamental problem with Western civilization and education and schooling is that we are taught the skills needed to make a living, following our ambitions and making money when we graduate, but we are never taught how to live. There is no thought given to how to become a balanced, loving, caring, responsible human being. There is no teaching about how to properly relate to your family, friends, lovers, life partners, and others. No instructions given on how to live in harmony with our fellow humans and other life forms, and with the source of everything, the divine spirit. Bearhart was blessed with having been taught by his mother and by a traditional elder about how to become the kind of human being who understands his responsibility to his family and to his community, and who realizes that making a living is only one part of being a productive person, a person who not only advances his own life, but who brings others along with him and lives a life of service. And so Bearhart devoted himself to teaching us that missing and very important instruction, the teachings about how to be a human being that he had learned from his elders and that he himself learned from his own life experiences. Shelley and I became very, very close with Bearhart as we often sponsored events that he came, or we offered our home for him to stay. And he was a frequent guest, and also Regina. And we became very close. And so our relationship was far more than teacher and student. It was much more intimate and much more human and personal, and in that way also enriched. I have photographs that I took of him in the studio behind my apartment here. And I remember I went to look at that photograph this morning that I had shot, and he was such a dignified man, very, very, a very handsome man. And I really enjoyed photographing him, and he just came to life in front of the camera. Because of Bearhart, Shelley and I tried to dedicate ourselves to living a life of more service. Shelley was an actress. I was working in the film industry as an assistant director. And we basically just said, you know what? We've been doing this long enough. Let's spend more time doing what we can to learn and to support Bearhart at these ceremonies and other teachers, and then find a way to be of service to other people in a more direct way. And so we, he sparked that in us. Shelley reminded Bearhart of his own mother. I might have said that earlier, but he loved his mother so much and missed her so deeply. And so he and Shelley had a very special and meaningful spiritual connection. And they could also make each other laugh. But they could see each other very, very clearly, and they had some very honest conversations with each other, sometimes challenging each other, but mostly it was just understanding each other and acceptance of each other. And I think that was very comforting to Bearhart, certainly to us. As Will Tagle and other teachers know, Being a spiritual teacher certainly has great challenges. Among them, that a lot of demands are made of you. A lot of people have expectations. A lot of people want to get close to you. Just a lot of things, and these present a lot of complications at times. And so, having a safe place where you can feel that you can go and just, kick your shoes off and sit back, have a beer, and just relax and be yourself is quite a gift. And I'm very happy that Bearhart felt he could do that here in our home. One time, Bearhart, I had a problem with confrontations and conflicts. I just always naturally shied away from them, tried to avoid them. And he pointed that out to me. And of course, it hurt my feelings, and I kind of shut down a little bit. But then I thought about it, and then I realized he was right. And so the way he did that, which he often did, the way he taught was often in these kinds of very personal ways. And that helped me to grow in my inner strength and get a sense of wholeness. And handling differences and disagreements between me and other people in a more effective and healthy way was one of the many blessings, one of the many teachings he gave me. He entrusted Shelley and me with responsibilities to assist him in conducting ceremonies and healing rituals. And we felt very honored and very blessed to have been given that level of trust. And it provided us with a great deal of joy in being of service. And it certainly helped both me and Shelley as a couple and as individuals to grow. One time, he conducted a wedding ceremony. It was just so beautiful. It was north of Santa Fe, and created this beautiful circular arbor, a sacred circle, and we had to make innumerable prayer ties to go around it, and we had to erect different poles to hold the four directions and various things. A fire was in it. It was a beautiful, beautiful space that he had been taught to do from his elders, and then he was doing this for our friends who were getting married. It was one of the most beautiful weddings I've ever been to. And that same kind of space he later used, we created under his guidance up in a place up in just north of Los Angeles. And a couple who had just lost their baby were in deep, deep despair. And they were able to go into that arbor and really in the most dignified, beautiful, and profound way imaginable, mourn their loss and really helped them tremendously. I think all of us here obviously are drawn to the native traditions and wisdoms because they are not only wise and practical, but they're also extremely beautiful. And as another teacher once said, while Europeans have all this wonderful industrial technology, it's the native people who are the masters of spiritual technology. And it was quite profound and beautiful. One of the happiest memories Shelley and I had together with Bearhart was when we sponsored an adoption ceremony that he led. We had these young people that we felt very close to and we wanted to adopt. And we had people that were close to us as brothers and sisters. And of course, Bearhart. And so we had this beautiful ceremony, and we adopted Bearhart as our spiritual dad, and he adopted Shelley and myself as his daughter and son. And that was truly one of the most beautiful moments of our lives. We have photographs we took afterwards, and I see it every day. I look at them every day, and I see his wonderful smile there, holding the eagle feather. And he was a wonderful man. He was a wonderful man, and I truly miss him. One last teaching. I hope I haven't been going on too long, but I thought this was a very important teaching. It was for me. And he taught me that when we have a gift to give someone else, we're not just giving away something we are relinquishing that thing. That means that we give it without any conditions attached. Some of you may have heard this teaching in his talks. So we learn to give, and we give it, and then we have to let it go. And that's not becoming fixated on how it is received, how much it is valued by the person we give it to, or how it is used. This gift can be an actual thing, could be an object or money or a piece of art or something very dear to us, or it can be something intangible like an opinion or giving advice or sharing something tender and vulnerable from our hearts, expressing love and care. And sometimes when we do that, our expectations are not met and our feelings are tremendously hurt, and there can be a lot of anger, grief, and resentment as a result. But knowing that when we are going to give something, we are just letting it go. See, let them do whatever they will with it. We're ready to just turn it over and not think further about it. It's been a great source of freedom for me mentally and emotionally. It saves a lot of hurt feelings, pain, and anger. And it has taught me to think ahead and be more judicious in what I am ready to give or share, to be more honest with myself. So it's only what I can fully release and relinquish that I will now give a gift to, whatever it is. So this teaching and so many others that Bearheart shared brought greater peace to my mind and soul. He helped me become a better and more fulfilled man. He made possible a more rewarding and wonderful marriage with my wife. He gave us a spiritual community of brothers and sisters that has provided continuing love, nurturing, and support throughout our lives. And he leaves us all with tools that allow us to live good lives and not to fear our coming deaths. I'm so blessed to have met him, to have known Marcellus Bearheart Williams, a brilliant and wonderful light in my life and that of so many people. And his light keeps shining on. And I thank each of you for listening, and God bless you all. Regina, again, thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I'm deeply touched and deeply honored and to be in the presence of all these remarkable people. Thank you.
Wow. I promised myself I wouldn't tell any Shelley stories, but I can't help myself after that, Walter. I'm sorry. One time, very early on, this was like the early 80s, so I hope you'll all forgive me or have some compassion for me. I said to Shelley, Shelley, I can't stand 98% of the people who come to see Bearheart because they would come to their house to see him. And she looked at me with such love in her eyes, and she said, Regina, why do you think they come to see Bearheart? Because I had told her they're the most self-centered, blah, 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 blah. Why do you think they come to see Bearheart? And with that, I realized, and this is keeping within the that I wanted to focus on today, I realized I was one of them. I had all the qualities that I didn't like in these people who came to see Bearheart. The only difference between them and me was I stayed to do the dishes, take care of the grandchildren, take care of him, take care of the house, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm so grateful for you, Walter. And I give myself a kudos for inviting you. And I hope that we get to hear more of you in the coming days. I'm going to move on to Bodhi Simpson. Would you please bring in Bodhi Simpson for us? She is my younger sister, art therapist. Her family has definitely become my Eneki, cherished relatives.
So I'm just so honored to be part of this today. I also did not know Bearheart personally, but I do feel connected to his energy through the stories. I love stories. And when I was catching up with Regina earlier last week, she had invited me to be part of this and to share a story. I believe it was to share a story of a time in my life that was both challenging, but also held great gifts and learning and wisdom. And to tie into what Will talked about, full of possibility and promise. So I will I'll guide you on a little bit of my journey and how I found my way. So, like many of us, my childhood was stressful. When I was born, my father was in prison and my mom was a single mom. And I remember feeling loved. I remember my mom loved me and my grandparents loved me and the world was good. And then I remember the day that my dad came home from prison. So before dad had come home from prison, I should just say, mom didn't really know what to call me. So for a few months, she called me baby. And then finally named me Jennifer because other people were naming their kids Jennifer. So she thought, that's a good name. My dad came home from prison and he was filled with rage and aggression. And so I guess to tie this into Will's talk earlier, the darkness and the shadows of my life kind of came when dad came home from prison. And, he would start physically hurting my mom and me. And I remember just being so paralyzed with fear. And I don't remember how it happened, but I ended up in the hospital. I was in intensive care for about 2 weeks. And I was in the bubble. I was in a bed with a bubble around it. And they said I had had an asthma attack. But I know what I remember is just being paralyzed with fear and I couldn't breathe. And when I got home, I remember my dad starting to teach me more about Buddhism. So he had started to tell me that he was studying Buddhism when he was in prison. And he decided that he was changing my name. And so he told me that my name was actually going to be Bodhi. And as you can imagine, I wasn't bonded with him. He was the scariest being I'd ever come in contact with. And I was angry. I did not want to be Bodhi. The teachers didn't know how to pronounce it. Kids made fun of me. I fought back. And I would say, what the heck does that name even mean? It sounds so weird. And he would say, it means bringer of truth, and that's who you are. And I remember just being so confused because in moments, he would teach me to not harm a living thing and that I was a good being and never, you bring people light and truth. But within, the flash of an instant, he would be hitting me and I would be crying myself to sleep. So I just remember feeling very alone and very confused about who I was. And I remember specifically when I was about 5 years old, I think I'd been crying and I looked in a mirror and I looked into my pupils and I asked myself, who am I? And I remember looking into my pupils and turned into stars. And it was like this whole mystical experience. But I just remember I didn't really have a sense of structure as far as what the world was, and who I was supposed to be, and who I truly was. And so around age 8, I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take the physical pain, and I couldn't take seeing my mom be hurt the way that she was. And I decided that while my dad was sleeping, that I was going to kill him. And I was sad about it, but I knew he had to be stopped. And so in that moment, I took some art materials and I went into the bathroom and I locked the door. And I remember drawing my dad and hurting him on the paper and taking crayons and expressing my rage and my anger. And then I remember feeling at first I felt this release and this energy. And then I felt extremely guilty and shameful. I knew if my dad had seen it, I would get hurt. And so I ripped it up and I hid it behind a little heater. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't have to hurt my dad. As I was creating and expressing this, I had this vision or this knowledge that I wasn't going to be in that situation forever, and that there was going to be a time where I had some control over who I was and who I would be in the world. And so in that moment, I went to a more internal place and I I created as much as I could. I would play in the mud and make little worlds. And when I was in the bathroom, I would draw in the shower. And I started making little friends that loved me. And it's funny because the day after I talked to Regina, when she said, "What are you going to talk about?" And this was the first thought that came. I ended up literally cleaning out my closet. And I found a book that I wrote when I was 9. So when I was little, I would create images, like I said, of my friends or characters that loved me, and I would hang them on the wall, and I would kind of feel the connection with them, and I knew they were good. And I would also write stories. And so this was my story. It kind of fell apart, but here's a story I wrote. It's about a sea ugly, because as much as I was being told I was the bringer of truth, I was also being told I was a terrible person and I should be ashamed for living. And so I would kind of express these kind of discombobulated beings that had like yellow teeth and warts. It was just disgusting. And I would, read the story and I'd put it on my wall, and I would practice. What I realize now is I would practice kind of making sense of my world and how I felt about myself, and practice giving myself love and accepting myself. And so fast forward, I'm an art therapist. I'd never heard of art therapy. I didn't know what it was. When I did finally find my way to the field of art therapy, looking back, what I realized is that because of what I had been through with my parents, it forced me to find my own way and to find tools that worked for me. And so I actually found some other samples that I can show just because I'm a visual person. The simple act of this is what I would do, just expressing the rage onto the paper was a purification. It was a cleansing. And then I would take time and I would add in some yellows. So these are literally things I found in the closet. It was kind of interesting. I would add in brighter colors and I would feel better. And here's one I made, I think I was in high school. And here's me fighting my dad. It looks like, I don't know what that is, like a fire extinguisher, but I'm kind of see, I'm still little and I'm in the chaos, but I'm finding a sense of control. And like Whittle talked about earlier, I was able to rise above the tension and have a bigger perspective so that I could nourish myself and heal myself. And what happened is that I realized that I was able to become exactly what I needed. So I didn't have a guide to look at my art with me and validate how I felt and tell me that it was all normal. And but that's what I do for a living. And in my studies of art, I started taking psychology classes, and I was able to find compassion for my family and understand trauma and how they didn't have people modeling how to do things any differently. They were finding their own way. And so I guess what I was able to find is that art is healing. We all have our own tools if we just take time to find what we do naturally and is comfortable, and that it's okay. I used to think it wasn't okay until I realized it was actually a profession. Then I was like, oh, this is a thing. And so in my adult life, since meeting the Earth Tribe, so I hadn't done art for years. I went to school to be an art therapist. Oh, actually, before I do that, when I went to school to be an art therapist, it was funny because after Regina had asked me, I found this in the closet. I literally wrote the learning experiences that have contributed to who I am as a person today. So I forgot I did this, but this was a way that I organized my life and my memories and what I was able to learn from them. And you'll notice the corner here is burned. And so what happened with this is when I was in grad school, I had so much compassion for my family and I understood. And so I was like, wow, I'm going to do this and I'm going to share it with them. And so I pulled the family together and I let them read my perspective. And my dad stood up and said, none of this is true. How could you even say this? And so And that moment, my heart closed, and I just couldn't believe that once again I was not validated. So I threw it into the wood stove, and I think I ran away for like 2 weeks. I don't know. I sleeping in somebody's trunk somewhere. But my brother pulled it out of the wood stove, and later when I came back, he gave it to me, and he said how much it meant to him to be validated in what happened. And what I was saying earlier is that I kind of got away from doing my own art for a long time. I was just immersed in helping others. But after meeting many of you, I was, again, my heart was blasted open, and I was like finding myself again, like I was when I was a little girl, and I started painting again. And so I'm making my friends again. And it's funny because as I'm making my new friends, I'm like, I see myself in them, but also I realize that as you create, it's a prayer, and you're connecting to different energies. And I still hang them in my room and talk to them, and help people learn how to do that for themselves. So so that's my story. I became who I needed. I found myself, I found my own way. And I love what Walter was just talking about with adopting people into your life. And I'm just so honored to be part of this community, and I'm adopting all of you. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Bodhi. I accept your adoption, my little sister, and my grandchildren there. Her children call me Grammy Jeannie. And you're my hero, Bodhi. I just love you. I love your whole process and the way you can hold it. We're going to move to Jenny Sundin, who's going to take us on a little journey because we need to move around.
Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. And Regina, thank you. This isn't really a moving meditation. I hope that's okay, but we're going to move inside. My name's Jennifer, and Bodhi, I had no idea you were a Jennifer too. And thank you so much for sharing that truth. I want to, over the next 10 minutes, I promise I'm going to try to keep it there, Regina. But I want to kind of hone in on those personal experiences that help to shape us, even, and most especially the hard stuff. I did not know Bearheart in an embodied way, but I am absolutely convinced that it was his spirit that brought me to meet Will Tagle and Earth Tribe. And a few years ago, I was down in Texas and with Will and company, and I had a dream while I was down there. And in my dream, I was part of a great circle. We were sitting around a campfire, and we were all sitting on these stumps, and there were clusters of people. And I was sitting on the stump, and I was surrounded by, to my right was Will Tagle, and to my left was Bearheart. And I will always remember that feeling of utter awe, really, and gratitude for the presence of these two elder men, these wise men in my life. And so I sat with their their wisdom and their presence next to me. And at some point, Bearheart stood up and he turned to me in my dream, and he handed me a drum. And he said, you need to add your voice to the circle. I want you to play. And I'm not much of a drummer, but somehow in my dream, I knew I shouldn't, I needed to listen to what he had to say. So I did. I stood up and I drummed and chanted. And then I got home. Within a week of returning home, I got an email from somebody inviting me to participate in a drum workshop. And they were making bear drums from Mother Bear. And I'm not drumming today, but I just want to show you this beautiful reminder that Bearheart gave to me, that Regina is giving me this gift of adding my voice to the circle. So thank you for this opportunity. We're going to close our eyes and go in for about 8 minutes or so. If you have your feet on the ground, you want to make sure your feet are flat. If you're sitting on the ground, perfect, but let's get grounded in a little way here. And we'll be taking an inward journey. So I invite you to close your eyes and just settle now into your body and breath. And inhale a deep breath in. As you exhale, feel your way into this great circle that's gathered here this afternoon. The presence of these remarkable spirits. Inhale a deep breath in. And as you exhale, feel your body, feel your own spirit as part of this great circle. Inhale a deep breath in. And as you exhale, go ahead and step into the temple of the heart. Go ahead and imagine yourself sitting in your own house. And it can look like anything you wish it to. A house of stone, walls of moss, a house of bricks, or cloth. You stand and you rise to take a journey. Perhaps you grab a blanket to cover your shoulders or a hat. You open the door and step across the threshold. And out in front of you is a great meadow sloping downward. You see out in the distance the tall peaks of mountains, tinged blue, standing shoulder to shoulder like brothers. You start down the path, a dirt path meandering and winding its way through the meadow. You are barefoot. The grasses tickle your ankles and your shins. You feel the cool dirt underneath your feet. And the bluebirds, the dragonflies, and Hawk. Hawk is circling. The birds are singing. The sun is shining and you feel easy and free. You walk down to the bottom of the meadow, and out in front of you now is a forest. The path leads right into the center of the forest, and you walk boldly into the woods. As you enter, wise oak, playful maple, graceful beech are there to greet you. Squirrel, blue jay, cardinal, they chatter as they journey alongside you. You walk for a few minutes here with the sunlight filtering in overhead, dappled light dancing off the leaves. Soon the woods change. And now there are tall pines, hemlock, spruce, whose boughs cover your head and the sky above. The light grows darker and darker. Follow the path into deep woods. You hear owl out in the distance, searching. You grow fearful but you trust the path you are on. And suddenly, little flashes of light appear through the boughs of hemlock, at the roots of the trees. And the path in front of you and behind you, almost like fireflies on a summer's evening. You look more closely and you realize these flashes of light are memories. They flash so quickly, you cannot make sense of them. You follow the path deeper and deeper. At some point, the sky opens up. Moonlight shines down, and there in front of you is a still lake. The water so quiet. As you gaze down at that still water, you see reflected all of the experiences, all of those memories, the hardships, the difficulties, the trauma, the pain. You see them painted upon the surface like a great canvas. You also see the joys, the ecstasy, the people who loved you, people you have lost, the people who have hurt you, the people who lifted you up onto their shoulders, people who inspired you, those who betrayed you, those whom you betrayed. All of these moments, all of these experiences of your life stretched across the surface of the water. You lean down in the moonlight and touch the water. And all of those experiences, all of those memories dissipate. You kneel, and as the water comes back to a standstill, you look down and see your own reflection, your own face gazing back at you. That divine, courageous, brave face. And you come to understand that all of those experiences and people, the difficulties and hardships, but also the joy and the ecstasy, all of those people and places and experiences have shaped you, have informed you. And also hemlock and pine, oak and maple, cardinal and owl, hawk and dragonfly and meadowgrass, and the seasons, and the sun and the moon and the rain, all of everything in existence, all of it informing you, a part of you. And you realize you are a part of all of it. One great story. One beautiful picture. You smile at the reflection in the water, and it smiles back. And you nod in gratitude and rise and turn to walk back. You head down the path in the dark pine forest, fireflies lighting your way. And past oak and maple and beech, squirrel and cardinal and blue jay walking alongside you. And you leave the woods and come out into the bright, sunlit meadow and begin to walk up the hill. Hawk singing overhead, and bluebird and dragonfly. The dirt soft and comforting underneath your feet. And you reach the top of the hill and you see your house. And you go to open the door. Only now you feel fulfilled, connected. You understand finally that all that has happened, everything we have experienced has led us to now, to this moment, to this incredible being standing right here. You come to understand we are all just walking each other home. So inhale a deep breath in. Exhale a long breath out. And slowly opening eyes, shaking your head. And I'd like to thank you for this journey. And thank you for letting me be here and lend my voice to this amazing family.
Thank you so much, Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
It was a beautiful walk with you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I'm going to ask our elder Mukit, Dr. Stephen Sachs, to come in and do a closing prayer. We're going to have Mukit close this beautiful time together with a prayer. He's already lighting the candle. Mukit leads our pipe ceremony every month, and he's right now the keeper of Bearheart's staff. Aho, Mukit.
Oh, Mado, Mado, Mado. Thank you for all this beautiful sharing. Thank you for all the stories. Thank you for Bearheart. And thank you for all he has taught. And thank you for all who have taught him. And may this spirit continue to flow. May we do as the Hopis tell us, to keep the tops of our heads open, so we may hear this spirit which continues to flow, and may we flow with it. May all these stories unfold in beauty. And in this time of transformation, and indeed, may all these stories and all that has been shared, for which we give so much thank, all these words that have been so helpful, and all this energy that went with it, may it flow out into the world and help with our transformation and the transformation of the world. For this is a time of transformation, as has been said so well. Help us to see, and I mean not only us here, but all, to see what is exposed by what has happened now. We mourn all the difficulties. We mourn all the people who have been injured by it and who will continue to be for some time. But let us learn from the errors that have been made, so that in future there will be proper preparation when things are out of balance to correct them more quickly. And even more important, help all to see what is exposed by these times. It has been there to see, but now is much clearer, magnified, about all the imbalances in the world, with nature, which we are a part, there is no separation. And we have too many have forgotten that. And with each other, help us to take the steps to bring all back into balance. Thank you all for all you have shared and for the sharing that will continue. May all the stories unfold beautifully. May all see clearly. And may all become your vision. Aho matakwiyasa.
And for you, dear Mukit, all the good health for you and Leah, and all that you hold dear. Could we bring Lily in for a few moments? Hi, Lily.
Hello there. I hope you can see this. I'm going to show
Yes.
you.
Yes, we can see it.
Now look at that tickled look on his face. This is the vision quest that you mentioned earlier.
You always did tickle him.
Yeah, and Will said, laughter is a prayer. And
Yes.
you saw on my face that startled look because he had walked up behind me. I was going to quest and we were sharing a bite of buffalo meat. And he says behind me, hungry. He had a wonderful sense of humor,
You're lucky you didn't take a bite out of you.
He said in his book a quote. He said, all mystics open their hearts to love, no matter who or what spirit or God is to them. And he says, when it comes right down to it, we're nothing until that nothing becomes dedicated. That is like a vessel through which good things can move, an instrument for receiving knowledge and sharing it with others who might be in need. And I wanted to share a moment that since I'm an elder with a heart condition, many have been calling me, including Miss Sheila Safer sitting over there, if I may name her, and asking, can they go to the grocery store for me or run an errand so that I'm not exposed out in the world? And I thought this was a gift of genuine compassion and love from the community. And I honor these people who are so warm-hearted. And with that said, I'd like to say a prayer. May in these times of uncertainty with this pandemic and other things, may we continue to open our hearts and reach out beyond ourselves with awareness and compassion. As Bearhart states, we know nothing, but we can dedicate ourselves as an instrument of love and knowledge to those around us in times of a pandemic and beyond. May we continue to grow in spirit and in community with all that is. Apapacho Anake, my heart to yours, cherished relatives.
Oh, Lily, thank you so very much for that blessing. I appreciate you, Lily.
Love you too, Regina.
Okay, at this time, I would like to ask to see my sister Sheila again. Oh, there she is in all her beauty with her beautiful scarf. Thank you, Sheila, for hanging out with us. Thank you so much. I'm going to mute myself so you won't hear me laughing.
Okay, now you have me laughing. Okay, well, Regina asked me if I had a story to share that was a story about a challenge and a gift that I found on the other end of that challenge. My story is not as, it's not quite as heart-wrenching as Bodhi's story, I have to say. I'm so touched by Bodhi's story, so powerful. Different kind of story. And I'll try to be brief because I realize we've been on here a long time together, which is so sweet. The story that came to my mind immediately is in 2015 on Memorial Day, we had a sweat lodge. And during that sweat lodge, we had thought that it would really rain hard. And all during our lodge, it didn't rain. And it was just the gentlest weather. It was so beautiful. And so we thought, oh, fantastic. Thank you, nature spirits, for being with us and supporting our lodge and giving us this break, in the weather. And so we thought that we had been spared some very serious weather. And that night at midnight, it rained hard and it rained heavy and it was an unusual kind of a rain because the rain rained like 13 inches in one spot. And it was on the Blanco River. And it followed the Blanco. And we're just downstream from the Blanco. So there was a wall of water that came through Wimberley. And it was about midnight when we heard all this noise outside. And it wasn't even raining in Wimberley. But we heard incredible, loud, cracking sounds and wind. So I was like, well, we have to go outside and see what's going on. So at that point, I think I had a nightgown on or something. I wasn't really dressed. And I put a poncho on and because I thought it might be raining. And Dan and I walked down to the river to see what was going on. And what was going on was that there was a major flood happening. And the sounds that we heard were the trees. And that was the hardest thing, was to hear the trees. So what we heard were the trees cracking, breaking, and being ripped up. And we witnessed this incredible, fast-flowing water ripping the trees out of the ground and carrying them away. And we were standing, and the neighbor came out at the same moment we did, and he was on the back porch. And I said, have you seen anything like this? And he said, no, I just moved here last week. So he just bought his house like the week before. So as we stood there talking to him, we watched the floodwater rise. There was a survey stake in the ground. And when we had arrived, it was just like this high up the stake. And in the few moments that we stood there, like less than 5 minutes, like maybe 4 minutes, it had gone all the way up over the stake. And we got to get out of here. So we went back to the house, and in my total naivete, I thought, well, I have to put some clothes on. We're leaving, we're going somewhere. So I put on a pair of jeans and I put on some clothes. Well, no, that wasn't a good thing to do. In the moment of me putting on jeans, in the short amount of time it took to put on a pair of jeans, the water came into our house. And it was a very short period of time. Anyway, we left our house and we were blessed with a calm. Like the water was raging. It was 60 miles an hour. It was fast on both sides of us. But right in front of our house in this pathway, it was total calm. And so we walked out into the waist deep water, through the waist deep water. I had my purse and my computer laptop over my head. And we walked out like this, and our landlord was on the street and said, do you need a ride? It's like, yeah. So we got a ride out, and there was a whole caravan. Our whole neighborhood woke up to the reality of the moment that said, we have to get out of here. So everyone at the same minute was driving, trying to find a way out. And we got out and we spent the night at a friend's house. And when it turns out there were 7 feet of water in our house. And so it was a surge that happened, and then it receded. And so our whole Earth Tribe community came together and supported us amazingly. And we, retrieved what we could retrieve. And that whole story is amazing. And we stayed in friends' homes. Carol Flake Chapman, who's here, helped us so much. So during that time, we moved 8 times in 6 months. One of the blessings was going to Mexico and staying at the Dreaming House and being with Emily and Alberto and We lived in Mexico for a month, and it was the best thing ever. So that was one of those unintended consequences and gifts that came out of it. But more importantly, it changed our total trajectory. And at that point, we were renting a house. We had no thought in that moment of buying a home or something different. So, but as soon as that happened, we started looking at, could we live on land? Could we live in community? We started talking about creating an eco village with some other Earth Tribe friends. And it just changed our trajectory entirely. And over the course of the next year, we researched all kinds of possibilities. And I want to show you this because this is the gift that came out of this is the gift that came out of this for us, is we now live next to Jacob's Well. So Jacob's Well is the heart of Wimberley. It's an artesian well, and we live walking distance from this magnificent womb of the earth now. We bought a townhouse. We're creating an eco-village with dear friends of ours. We have a community garden where we grow spectacular food. And this is the gift that came out of the flood for us, because it completely changed how we were living. And then the humor of this, Regina, is after you asked me about this, and I said this was the story I was going to tell, then we had, the next day, we had another rain here in this new home. It rained 4 inches in 1 hour, and it flooded our living room.
I didn't do it.
No, you did not. But once again, it took us by complete surprise. Like, we didn't get it that this was happening. I mean, we were here, we were home. Anyway, flooded the living room. So we bailed and we dried it out, we cleaned it out, we told our friends what happened. And lo and behold, with the help of our friends, Dan and 2 other guys built a French drain behind our home. And it was so amazing that we now have this beautiful French drain behind our house that diverts the water away from the low spot at the back door. And we're not going to flood now. I mean, hopefully. This is phase 1 and 2 about what we can do. But so now the gift of the second flood is that we now have this beautiful French drain that will not only help us, but help all our neighbors from flooding. So, we never know what's going to happen, and our helping angels come every time and assist us in ways that we just, we have no way of knowing that can happen. So I'm really grateful and happy to tell the story. And thank you, Regina, for asking me to give my voice and speak into this sacred circle. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sheila. And, I think what it takes and what I see when you tell the story is that it takes somebody like you who is willing to see the gift in such dire situation, because sometimes it's not so easy to say, it helped us in a very big way. We wouldn't have done this, or we wouldn't have moved. We wouldn't have gotten off the couch from eating chocolates and watching TV. Not that that's what you do, but you know what I mean. And it's like sometimes we need a little push to come through. And I really appreciate you, Sheila. Thank you so very much. Let's bring in Erin and have her do. Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Thank you for waiting for us to arrive in our little canoe.
No problem. I've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
It took us a while to get here, but we got here.
Yeah. It's nothing. It's all in divine order.
Would you give a song?
Yes, but I'm inspired right now to a little poem that I wrote the other day, and it's very brief, and then I'll sing the song. But I just got inspired because it was kind of apropos to some of the sharing that happened. So I'm going to be off camera for a second while I go read it, but you should be able to hear me.
Okay.
Okay. So let me pull it up here. Okay. I open my heart over all the world until there is nothing to fear, nothing to hide. Opening for all who must cry, for those who fear they're going to die. Forever wide, until all the hearts are calm and the turmoil does subside. Opening my heart for all to feel peace, opening the light that illumines our soul inside. Opening my heart forever wide, forever wide.
Wow. That is so beautiful.
Well, it was just definitely a divine inspiration.
I can see why that.
You know, the pandemic and just feeling, I'm an empath and I feel the world. I feel what's happening and I just had to express that. So, okay, so I'm going to do one of my favorite chants, it's a Native American. And here's my friendship circle dance drum. I always like to share it because it's so pretty. So. Let me be one with the infinite sun forever and ever and ever. Let me be one with the infinite sun forever and ever and ever. Kinye wate lenya lanya mahote. Hi no, hi no, hi no, hey, hey, hi no, hey. Let me be one with the infinite sun forever and ever and ever. Let me be one with the infinite sun forever and ever and ever. Kinye wate nanya lenya mahote. I know, hey, I know, hey. Let me be one with the infinite sun forever and ever and ever.
Aaron, that was so beautiful. I really am so appreciative of you being willing.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, we still have a big audience. Would you be willing to bring my Mukit back for a short little while? And then I'll say goodnight to everybody and we can have dinner. Bye, Mukit.
Hi, this has been so beautiful. Thank you, Regina, and thank you for everybody who shared so marvelously. It's been great. I take it you wanted me to tell that story. I'm one of the human beings who's been fortunate enough to learn from many people. There are continual transformations, and there are a lot of things that are personal and so forth. But I just thought, well, I should share part of one of the early ones because there's so many aspects of it that I can't just tell it in a minute or two. But it was like in 1958. It was my second year in college. Actually, I just come out of a down period. So this was the time for opening up. And it was winter vacation, but there were 2 more weeks of school. And maybe I'll tell a little bit about that part. Book to read afterwards. Book to read before the semester ended. And I wasn't going to get it done at home. So I went back early. But before I could pick up that book for English class, I had this essay I had to write, which was okay, but a piece of poetry also came through at that point. Maybe it's my best piece of metaphysics. It's the Eternal Limerick. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equals infinity. 1 equals 1 equals 1 equals 1 to eternity. The whole is equal to its part. The day that's done will never start. For 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 1 is our destiny. Of course, that reminds us of what Bearhart always tells us. He always used to tell us, and is still telling us, and that we're all related, and that everything is a cycle. We return to where we came. That's peace. We're all connected. Everything is continual. And yet it's open-ended. It's not just a circle. The circles make a spiral. Well, the interesting thing was after that had come through, then I could pick up the book. And I don't know if any of you have read it or not. It was E.M. Foster, A Passage to India. And there's more, had to move more what I said in the essay, but it fit the poem also. And it's the first time I had this experience. I opened the book and I said, my God, this is what I just wrote. You know, somebody did my biography. Said, oh, he read this book and then wrote this. It was the other way around. And that was an opening that took a while till it came back. I had a lot of inner stuff to clear. But it was one of the early openings that has been very helpful to me. And it's beautiful to share all these stories with all of you, I hope.
Well, see, that leaves a little tiny bit of space for me. Do you know what the Queen said to Alice in front of all the people in the village? She said, how much is 1 plus 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 1? And Alice looks around like, huh? And the Queen says to everybody, see, I told you, she can't do math. Well, that's just a little bit about what some of us women have been dealing with, but that's a whole other webinar.
Oh, yes.
If I ever get invited back, we're going so far over time. But we do have still a very big audience, but I'm going to have to say good night. And I wish you much, much health and all your family and loved ones. And without singling out too many people, I want to just offer a prayer for Holly and Katie, Will's direct relatives, grandfathers, grandmothers. Look down upon these precious beings while you look down upon all the rest of us. We all want to live, grandfathers, grandmothers, but this is the only life that we know. Our knowledge and our viewpoints are so limited. So help us in that way, grandfathers, grandmothers, that we can know that there is a bigger picture. We just are not privy to it at this moment, but we are definitely part of it. And our faith is guiding us on that path. Those little sparks that came from under the roots that my sister Jenny spoke about, grandfathers, are leading us, and that we must pay attention and we must continue to advocate for what we know in our hearts is the best thing for all of us, for all our relatives, all of our Aneki, our cherished relatives, all living things. In this way, grandfathers, grandmothers, I'm asking you for this kind of a blessing. And I say thank you for all of our lives and all the love that we have experienced in our lives. Oh, Mataha Kuyasan. Oh, good night, everybody.